Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and this program comes to you from Woodstock, New York, and it's called Let's Live. And my subject tonight is senior hunger. And I think it's a very important subject. It's not something that's going to be on the front page of any newspaper or magazine, but there are some stories now being written because it really is affecting seniors in a big way. And of course, Ulster County is a county of senior citizens, and Woodstock has a reputation for being the senior-most population of the communities in Ulster County. So the senior hunger and the financial woes of seniors are hitting right in our home and right in our community. And we all know, whether we want to admit it or not, someone or several someones who are suffering from senior hunger. And you know, the problem is that once you're a senior and you face up to the fact that you don't have any money left, it's really, it's difficult. Because usually by then you don't have the resources to go out and get a job. You're not physically able to get a job, or maybe you're not mentally capable of working anymore. I know I'm totally convinced that the place where I work I'm the oldest employee there, and by a lot. And so, you know, some of the people think, well, she is just so much older than I am. They even have trouble communicating with me because I'm older than their grandmothers. But there are many of us in this area who do need the funds, and we do need the job. Many of us need jobs because we need community integration. You've got to have community integration if you are going to be a healthy senior. And by that I mean you've got to have routine, challenging interaction with other humans in your community on a regular basis, because that's what keeps your brain going. And without your brain, it's tough. And the older you get, whenever you lose a little bit of your mental acuity, it's harder and harder to get it back. So it's a really difficult thing. And of course, with seniors, there are resources for seniors. There's the Office on Aging, there's Catholic Charities, there are different organizations out there. And of course, one of the first things that we can all do as seniors is to get a SNAP card. And of course, seniors would just rather be shot than go get a SNAP card. But truthfully, it's not that difficult. If you've tried in the past and you were refused, I urge you to return, because the first time you apply for a SNAP card and you don't get it, it's possible that you were too upset or too embarrassed or too humiliated or too whatever to actually answer the questions properly. Whereas the second or third time you try, the situation may be different. Also, you do have to have certain types of documentation in order to qualify for a SNAP card, and you may not have had the proper documentation. And the second or third time that you do this, you may have the proper documentation. So it's a process, as life is a process. We're going down a path. And, you know, even if all you get is the minimum amount of money every month that is allotted to a senior, that's fine. You'll get enough money for some eggs and some bacon and some cream and some coffee and some bread for toast. You know, you're not going to waste your money. And whenever you go into a grocery store and you use your SNAP card, you are bringing funds to your community. And this is very important because our communities in Ulster County need all the money that they can get. And many of our communities are what we call food deserts. There's not enough food in the community. There's not enough purchasing in the community for better quality food to come into the community, you're going to participate in a positive way. So having a SNAP card is a very, very positive thing. So while I'm talking about senior hunger, I'm going to put in a plug for my latest book. It's a memoir called I Don't Hang Out in Churches Anymore. And as of last night, you can get this book on eBay. You can get this book at thurmangreco.com and pay for it on PayPal. And I'm still making my way through Amazon, which is a really, really interesting puzzle to work through. But I have made up my mind that I, too, am going to have my book on Amazon. So it may take a few more weeks, but I'm working on it. You can also pick this book up in the Mowers Meadow Flea Market on Saturdays and Sundays. I have been there on Wednesdays as well, but I don't think we're on Wednesday. The market is open. The flea market part of the Mowers Meadow is open on Wednesday. I think they're only open Saturdays and Sundays. And this book is not going to be available at Mowers Meadow too much longer, because once it gets cold, they shut down until the spring. So it's a good thing if you're thinking about getting anybody a birthday gift or an anniversary gift or possibly Christmas or Hanukkah gift. This is a really nice gift because, for one thing, it is a Woodstock book. You're going to read stories about people that you recognize. You're going to read about businesses that you recognize. You're going to see addresses that you recognize. It is a book very, very much about Woodstock. And it's a memoir, and it does talk about hunger, it talks about miracles, and it does take place in Woodstock. And I really defy anybody to find and show me a more Woodstock book than this one. It's an easy read. Well, I'm not going to say it's an easy read because we do talk about hunger, and some people are quite touched by it. It's very intimate. It's very truthful. Memoirs, if they are going to be a good memoir, a memoir must tell the truth. So this book definitely tells the truth. So I had one reader call me up, and I never expect to hear from people who've read the book, but I do. I've been hearing from people. And she said, I had to stop and take a breath. I had to set the book down for a while and then pick it up again, because it really was very intimate and very touching. But at the same time, I've had other people tell me this book is lovely. I've had other people tell me that they were very, very impressed by what they read. So it's a fun read. I haven't had anybody say, well, it's an awful book to read. So, and I think I'll start off the first chapter. I entitle Welcome, and this is after you get through part 1 and part 2. In a memoir, you write the first section talks with the parts of your life that you lived when you were younger that prepared you for the experience that you subsequently write about. And of course, when you write a memoir, the person in the memoir who's writing it talks about facing obstacles and challenges and problems. But my challenges and my problems are not the focal point. The focal point isn't the problem, and it isn't me. The focal point is, what did I do about those problems? So you have to rely on the past, because you have to know what happened in your life prior, which led you to do the things that you did while you were dealing with the problem that you had. So the first chapter is entitled Welcome. She had a backpack. He carried more of a knapsack, and I saw them coming into the parking lot as they rode on bicycles. "Hi," I said in my most inviting tone. "Welcome to the pantry." They entered the pantry room, gently touched the food as if in a shelf, as if in a museum store. They picked up the items and put them back on the shelf when they couldn't fit into the packs. It seemed we offered more than they could carry home. They finally agreed on what they would carry and headed off home, wherever and whatever that was. They came to the pantry to shop many times after this first afternoon. I saw them riding their bicycles into the parking lot. This first visit was repeated over and over and over. They never were comfortable in the pantry room. Each visit was quiet voices and gentle touches as they finally agreed on what they would carry. They kept their story, themselves, and their lives separate and hidden away. I would have loved to know this couple better, but it was just not in their agenda. All I could do was continue to be a compassionate observer, hoping that one day they would be more comfortable with their situation and their trips to the pantry. So that introduces you, and it introduced me to the pantry. And the story talks about the pantry from the beginning, because in the beginning, the first time that I visited the pantry, we served about 25 people that morning. And it was Marie Duane and myself. And we never had more than one person in that room at a time. Well, it wasn't long until that pantry was serving hundreds of people every week. And the waiting line in the hallway was many times way over an hour. The shopping time was 2 to 3 minutes. So the change from that morning when I saw one person at a time to this hour plus waiting time was significant. And we talk about, I do relate all of the things, some of the things, I think all of them, but surely not, the things that contributed to the more and more people coming into the pantry. And of course, one of the things that contributed to more and more people coming to the pantry was the tanking of the community, the economic tanking. And it wasn't just in Woodstock. This was all over the country. We had people lost their homes. Foreclosures were a fad. We had people lost their jobs. We had people lost their savings because they had their savings in stock market funds, and all of a sudden they had no stock market funds. And so they had no resources. And we had a lot of homeless people. We had people who started off in the early 21st century with multiple homes. They had fancy cars. They had families. They had children. They had all kinds of things. And by the time they found the pantry, they had nothing left. And of course, it was an interesting experience because I would hear from members in the community, well, you've got all these fancy cars in this parking lot. They must be rich. They must be making money. Well, you know, cars represent the past. So maybe they were rich at some point. Maybe they had a good credit rating at some point, and maybe they were able to buy that fancy car at some point. Or maybe they had inherited that fancy car finally. Whatever. But by the time they came to the pantry, they may have been living in that car, because surely I can promise you that the houses were long since gone. The city dwelling was probably gone. Very, very few people were still living in weekend homes up in Woodstock and still having their big homes in the city. We had a number of artists and writers and musicians who were closely connected, not only with Woodstock, but with New York City, with Paris, with London. We had one who had close connections with Dubai, Montreal. We had people who had homes in all of these lovely places. And all of a sudden they found themselves with no income. And so they had to make a decision. And you know, they did something which, for some of them, it turned out all right. And for some of them, it did not. They looked around and said to themselves, well, you know, my Woodstock apartment or my Woodstock home or my Woodstock whatever, or Bowersville home or whatever, is less expensive than my city one, so I'm going to get rid of what I have in the city. And, you know, in some cases they felt like that was easier because they could have been renting in the city, whereas they were probably trying to buy something up here. But what happened to a lot of these people is once they got up here and they cut their ties to Paris or London or New York or Montreal or wherever that other town was, city was, that other home was, they had no income at all. So they were truly down and out in Woodstock. And that was quite an experience to see these people, talented, well-educated, articulate, standing in line in the food pantry week after week after week, year after year. And some of them, you know, lost everything. They lost, their home up here was foreclosed on, and they ended up homeless for a while. Some of them finally, years after, ended up in the Rupco housing, I understand, for artists in Kingston. And some of them moved to Kingston before Rupco ever had housing because it was cheaper. They were able to get better appointments. And of course, some of them headed for Albany because they could get jobs in Albany. And Albany, throughout this whole situation, Albany's jobs, because Albany did have jobs, paid better, the rent was cheaper, and they were able to get around much better. But it was so difficult for these people who had roots here in Woodstock to just give all that up and go to Albany. And I always felt so positive for them when I would hear somebody say to me, well, this is the last week you'll see me. I've gone to Albany and gotten myself a job. And the next thing I would say is, well, but have you found some place to live yet? They always had, by the time they told me, they had a job, they had an apartment, they had a sofa somewhere, they had found a place in the Albany area. And I would ask them, and they would always say, well, it was less expensive and the job is paying more, and I had a choice. There were no jobs here in Woodstock. And it was really difficult because there was a time when shopkeepers were not selling anything. And we eventually went through some phases where we had a lot of empty storefronts in Woodstock. And the people that worked in those stores, the people who had those stores, they were out. I mean, they had lost everything, and there was nothing for them. If a store closed on Tinker Street at a certain address, you couldn't just go down 2 blocks away and get another job because that store 2 blocks away was closing too. And there was a short time in Woodstock when several store owners were bringing their employees to the pantry to get food. And I really felt, for me, that was the bottom. We bottomed out with that. And I feel like that things began to make a little bit of a change when the shop owners quit bringing their employees. And the employees kept coming, and many of the shop owners kept coming, but they weren't being brought in. You know, in other words, the shop owners weren't saying to them, look, I'm going to take you down here. I'm going to introduce you to this. You've got to have this food. We don't have the money, blah, 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 all of those things. And they came in and they felt comfortable enough to stay. And of course, when I first started working in the pantry, we had very little, if any, fresh produce. We didn't have any dairy. We didn't have bread. And not long after I started working in the pantry, the Hunger Prevention Nutrition Assistance Program people insisted that we have fresh produce and that we have bread, fresh bread, multigrain bread, and that we have dairy. And the pantry went through this metamorphosis. There were no refrigerators or freezers or anything. There was no facility for this kind of food. And I can remember realizing that we could get eggs and that we could afford eggs and that eggs were something that people could really use, and trying to find a refrigerator to put the eggs in, because we were by then serving a large number of people, so we needed to have a lot of eggs. And then after we settled the fact that we had the refrigerator, I was trying to find a place to put the refrigerator, because there was really no space for the refrigerator anywhere. I had no facilities for the refrigerator. And as the manager, I was really just struggling to find out, where are we going to put these eggs? And of course, many was the week when we had eggs in a refrigerator at one of the firehouses, and we had refrigerators here, there, and yon, and it took a long time to get the pantry adjusted to A, all the people that it was serving, and B, the equipment and the things that we needed in order to serve the things that the state of New York was giving us to serve. And of course, the state of New York is so fabulous. Every time I hear anybody complain about the state of New York, I just cannot join in. I am so impressed by how the state of New York serves its people, cares for its people, cares for the welfare of the residents, and really does everything possible to make sure that people have the basic things that they needed. And they did this at a time when there were no jobs, there was no money. It was just a really, really difficult situation. But the state of New York managed. And I can remember, I'm going to digress here for a moment, the first winter that I was here, and there was snow and there was cold, and everybody was running around in winter clothes and snow boots, starting with the day after Labor Day, and really, prepared. And then the first big snow came, and out came the snow plows. And I was so delighted and so impressed. And I realized, okay, this is what our taxes are paying for. They're paying for these huge pieces of equipment that are going to keep the roads safe and keep us all moving. We would have these big snowstorms and people wouldn't be inconvenienced. They would just keep right on going to work and doing the things that they had to do. And of course, when I think of that, then I remember the homeless people. And I remember how hard it is, and how difficult it is, and how scary it is to be homeless and to be looking for a place to spend the night, and it's snowing. And you're wondering, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? How am I going to make it through? It was really a very, I could see this. It could be a very difficult time. And then, of course, while it was a difficult time, we'd be having snows. So it was, it was an interesting thing, because on the one hand, we had all of these things that the state of New York gave us, and then we had all these people who had no roofs over their heads. And in many cases, I didn't think that they were going to have roofs over their heads. And that, it was just, it was a really difficult time then. And of course, you know, Woodstock is a, I'm going to read something to you about the homeless. I found it. I send over a special request for the homeless. They have the same problems as the rest of us. They deal with health issues, lack of housing, jobs, and transportation. They're just homeless in addition. Many have no health care and will have no health care until you pull off one of your special miracles. They stand in line, many of them, looking the absolute best they can. They are so quiet, it's as if they have lost their voices, and they have. I know you know these things, but I'm telling you anyway. I pour out my heart to you as I thank you in advance for all you do for the least of us. And I have another one. Now that I've started reading, I have another one here. Thank you for leading the hungry to our pantry. May I see your face reflected in the volunteers and in the shoppers. My time in the pantry is an opportunity to offer sincerity and connection to you, the shoppers and the volunteers. May I listen to shoppers when they need to talk to someone. May I have time to help those whose shoulders and knees no longer work. May I receive your wisdom and love to share with the shoppers. And may the shoppers feel welcome when they visit the pantry. May they know that they are not separate from others. And may they leave the pantry in peace and safety as they head home. And finally, may they feel connected to their community wherever they go. Thank you for leading the hungry to our food pantry. And you know, each time I go through these pages, things kind of segue over to other things. May the shoppers feel welcome when they visit the pantry. When I was at Mowers Meadow on Wednesdays, they're not doing Wednesdays anymore this season, I would see the people waiting to go into the food pantry and coming back after having been to the food pantry. And of course, there wasn't that much difference between the homeless and those who were housed. But for me, it was very obvious. I could always see the homeless. I probably, for the rest of my life, as long as I have my wits about me, will recognize the homeless wherever. I do know that I recognize the homeless on sidewalks. I recognize them in bus stations. I can see them in the Port Authority when I take the bus in. I can see them walking on the streets. And I do see them sitting in the parks and talking and reading books. And they're, you know, once you know that you see the homeless, you know that you're going to see them forever. And they recognize me for what I am, as a person who works in a pantry. I mean, they too know what they are seeing as well. So it's an interesting, I guess that's an interesting blessing that I have received since working in the pantry, is I am able to see people for what they are, And I do know that they are with each other forever. And of course, when you are homeless, you soon become voiceless. You soon become outwardly opinionless because you do not feel comfortable sharing any of your inner feelings with anyone. Because after all, you're homeless. And that takes a lot of your validity away. It's a very, very, it's a very intimate feeling. Bless their trip to the pantry, Lord. Bless them, no matter how long or short the journey. The shoppers catch the UCAT or Trailway bus, hitchhike, pile in cars, ride a bicycle, walk. Bless them as they do whatever it takes to get to the pantry. They were here last week and got a 3-day supply of food, of which they now made last 7 days. And now Wednesday has rolled around again and they're out of food, so they're back on the road traveling to the pantry. They reminded me that my job is to get the food for them, and your job is to get them to the pantry. Especially, Lord, bless this young couple who live in an abandoned Connex on a road out by Big Indian. They hike 5 miles to Route 28 and then hitch a ride to the pantry. They wear practical hiking and camping clothes, this pair. He is so handsome, and she's Elizabeth Taylor gorgeous. I've never seen a more beautiful couple, but I'm concerned. I can't help it. He wore a hunting knife strapped to his thigh today. It had a 7-inch blade. Because he's sick, they can't carry a lot, but they do what they can. And then, after shopping, see you next week, we're hitching a ride home now. When they are packed up, they hike back out 375 to Route 28 and hitch a ride back to Big Indian. Bless them and bless their return. And help me understand, you are with them on their journey wherever the road may lead them. Quiet my concerns for them. I can't thank you enough for all you do for the pantry. Bless them all and bless their return. You know, this book is for sale. It's $15 if you buy it in Mowers Meadow. It's $16.99 if you go to thurmangreco.com or if you go to eBay. And there is an extra charge for that. It's not that I'm gouging people, but it does cost extra when you go through these other services. But you can pick it up. I'm going to be out there Saturday and Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday from now until the season is finished. And this book makes a wonderful gift. It's also a very interesting book to read because it really talks about our community in a way that other books do not. And I think that it gives it an interesting perspective to talk about our community in a different way. And I'm going to see if I can find something else to read that might be different, that maybe we haven't seen before in this book. I've been asking several of the people that have bought books that I know that are in this book. I'm asking them to autograph the part of the book where their name is. And I am keeping a special copy of the book that has the autographs of the different people that have come by and bought copies. And also, would be interesting for people, if you buy this book, if you see somebody in this book that you recognize, ask them to sign it, because this is a very Woodstock event. I have one called Watch Over the Homeless. The snow is falling. The weatherman predicts a big one. Please help the homeless make it through the night. Protect them from harm wherever they are, under the overpass, in the back of the parking lot, on the porch of an abandoned house, and under the Tannery Brook Bridge. I pray that none of the homeless get frostbite tonight. And finally, may they find a hot breakfast tomorrow, and dry shoes, and warm coats. And now I have another thing to read on account of we have elections coming up. This is my political chapter. No, that's not it. That was another one. I want to read my political chapter to you because I do have one, which is really interesting because it talks about a politician. Because I did used to get, when I was in the food pantry, I would get mail from different politicians. And of course, I would always answer their mail. And as soon as they got the mail and they read my letter, I wouldn't hear from them ever again, which was so hilarious. Because I knew that if I really answered their mail, they wouldn't, and they didn't. And that's because, they're really afraid. Because nobody who is running for office really understands poverty locally. They really don't. And I'm going to look for that one now. Thank you for the blessings of a long life which you give to elders shopping in food pantries everywhere. And thank you for caring for them. They shop at the pantry until they are too old and finally can't get there anymore. Please help pantry volunteers realize the neediest among us are not those in the line, but the ones who can no longer get to the pantry. Motivate volunteers to deliver food to these people. Once a person can no longer care for him or herself, destitution rules. The old and sick need food just like the younger shoppers who walk, ride the bus, pile into cars, and hitchhike to the pantry. Help us at the food pantry feed those whose bodies, minds, spirits are old, sick, broken. Teach us to make some joy for each day lived. Make us aware that many seniors have outlived their pensions and savings and are living on insufficient funds afforded by Social Security. Help pantry volunteers be open to the special needs of those seniors at the end of their lives when they can no longer work to earn the needed money. They are determined to not go to their children. Please make us convincing as we talk to them about getting food stamps to help. Let us understand it's difficult to not compare ourselves with others, to not compare the present with the past, and it's so easy to be overcome with worry about the future. Please help volunteers know that just carrying bags of food home to wherever or whatever that is can be difficult for a senior whose shoulders and knees no longer work as they once did. Finally, thank you for giving us all a chance to serve these seniors in the pantry as we look around and see ourselves in their faces. So that's really the theme of this whole show this evening, and that's the seniors among us who no longer have the money. They're living in homes in Ulster County or apartments in Ulster County that they can no longer afford, and in some cases they are being evicted. I had a very close friend recently. The landlord said, "You've got to leave. You've got to leave because I've got to fix this place up so I can sell it, because I'm out of money and I have to sell this house so I will have money to live on." And here was a senior with no leftover money trying to find a new place to live. And this is not an isolated case. This is not something that has happened once this summer. This is something that has happened all the time. And it's not just happening in Woodstock. It's happening all over Ulster County and all over New York State. It's just happening everywhere. Everybody who can has turned their dwelling, whether it be an extra room or the house itself or an apartment, into an Airbnb. And whenever you do that, you've got to kick out the residents, and not only the residents, you have to kick yourself out because you've got to be gone when the Airbnb people come. And it's a terrible situation. And I am not criticizing the people who have gone to the Airbnb route. We all have to do what we have to do to raise money. And I have a job. My spouse has a job. I urge every senior that I know who can get to a job to go get it. Get the job, take the job, do what you can to pay your bills and set aside money for the day when you physically can no longer work. It's as simple as that. You need to prepare for the tomorrow which is coming, unless you drop dead first. And you know, if you come down with a serious illness, there went, there goes, there will go, there will disappear your nest egg. So that if you come down with a terrible disease, and there are many terrible diseases, it is going to cost you everything you have. And while you're doing this, while you're preparing yourself, as I encounter people who thought they had themselves ready for their end of life, to please make sure, get down to the nitty-gritty, check the T's and make sure they're crossed, dot the I's and make sure they're crossed, so that the loved ones that you have, that you're leaving behind, will indeed receive what you want them to receive. And if at all possible, give it to them now. Do not wait until you're dead and leave it in a will for your grandchild to receive that set of china, or for your nephew to get that list, that collection of books, or somebody else's silver tray to get the silver tray. Take those things and give them away now, because once you're gone, you will have no control over what's going to happen to those things. And the chances that your intentions and your desires will be gone awry are pretty good. And that's a terrible thing to say, but you know, it's because once we do pass, and if you have a disease, if you have a costly disease, your debtors are going to want those things. Your children may want them, but there may be someone else out there who's going to get them first. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's really, really true. And in the meantime, let us not beat ourselves over the shoulders, and let us not beat ourselves over the head. We are living in times now that are different from what they were when we were young. Things are different. Life is different. We have to prepare ourselves. And if you do have funds, do what you can to protect them. And do not hesitate to try to get food stamps. You earned those food stamps. You paid for those food stamps with your taxes. Go for it. And if you feel like you do not have enough money to eat on, go to a food pantry. It is not an embarrassment. It is not a terrible thing. This is the way life is now in the 21st century. You go. The state of New York has set aside food. They have set aside some very good foods, fresh produce, multigrain breads. They have set aside dairy products. They have set aside all kinds of wonderful foods that are for us if we need it. And that's what having a food pantry is all about. And that's why there are a lot of food pantries in Ulster County. You can get probably a list of all the food pantries in Ulster County by contacting Catholic Charities. You can go to Office for the Aging. You can Google it. You can Google that list if you're computer literate. You can do all the things that you need to do to get yourself on the food pantry list. And realize that this is how it is in the 20th century. This wasn't how it was when we were young and we saw our parents being old. When I was young and my parents were old, that was in the 50s, that was in the early 60s. My parents were quite elderly then. Times were very, very different. And now we are in a situation where times have completely changed and there is nothing you can compare it to. You cannot take 2015 or 2018 or 2020 and compare that to 1950 or 1960. You need to face your situation and go for it. And while you're at it, if you'd like to have a wonderful motivational book about poverty, I recommend I Don't Hang Out in Churches Anymore. My editor chose that title. It's a title which means that I don't hang out in churches anymore because I'm hanging out in the basement where the pantry is, not up in the sanctuary, which is on the first floor. And that's a big thing, because when you're working in a food pantry, you're really not in the sanctuary anymore. And I'd like to read a couple of other things. It's a miracle. I don't know why I get so excited when I discover these things happening. It's as if I thought nothing like this had happened. When people come to the pantry, their lives change. They come first for food. Then, when their nutrition improves, their health improves. When they realize their food source is stable, they quit worrying about being hungry all the time, and this changes their outlooks on life, and they begin to look better. They meet people, and then they don't feel so isolated. Not long after that, they begin volunteering, and that's when their lives really change. When people volunteer, they give them themselves. Sometimes they never had a chance to give anything to anyone, not in their whole lives. Giving is extremely important to the human condition. I feel this experience was arranged for us in the pantry. When we make contact with another person in the pantry, whether we know that person or not, we're led by this experience, and all things are made new. I'm going to continue talking about my book and talking about food pantries and talking about poverty and homelessness periodically on this show. I do have a couple of things coming up. On the 22nd of September, I'm going to be having a book signing at the Mowers Meadow Flea Market, and I'm going to offer free light refreshments to everyone that comes and gets a book and gets it signed. And then on the 23rd at St. Gregory's Episcopal Church, I will be offering, in order to raise money for the Woodstock Dog Park, an interactive program about us and our pets. And I'm going to be talking about different things that dogs do, and people are always trying to figure out, why are they doing it? Why does my dog howl? Why does my dog eat grass? Why does my dog run around in circles before he goes to bed? Why does my dog dig holes incessantly? Different things like that. I have a whole bunch of different things that dogs do, and I'm going to talk about those at the St. Gregory's on the 23rd of September. And I will have another show, and all of the funds from that particular workshop will be going to the Woodstock Dog Park, which is really down to nothing. We need money. We need money to fix trees. We need money to fix the fence. We need money to fix the dog park. And because every time there's a big storm, it does damage, and there are so many trees around it. And of course, those trees are what make that dog park lovely. But they are high maintenance. We did have some guardian angels over this last month. We had the Geezer Patrol come out and fix a tree, and they took a tree down, and of course taking a tree down is like hundreds to thousands of dollars, and they got that tree down. So we are indebted to the generosity of the Geezer Patrol, and I think it's so cute that they call themselves the Geezer Patrol. So I'm hoping that you will come to that show, the interactive workshop. The donation is $15. I will be selling copies of Healer's Handbook, and all of the money, they're going to be $15 a copy, and every bit of the money that goes to the Healer's Handbook will be donated to the Woodstock Dog Park. And if you want to purchase a gift for a gift for someone, Healer's Handbook is a wonderful gift. It's a book that's very easy to read, and it talks about the spirituality of disease. And it's been very well written, and the cover is lovely. It's a really nice gift. I will also be selling, I don't hang out in churches anymore, at both the book signing and at the St. Gregory's. And I'm selling it every Saturday and every Sunday in my booth, in my stall at the Mowers Meadow Park. I am selling my books. I am also selling used books, which people are donating to me. I'm selling them for $1 each, and the proceeds of that go to Feed the Hungry. So I am raising money to feed the hungry when I have that booth. It's very important. I'm hoping to get a generous amount of money to buy peanut butter. Peanut butter is an extremely important product in food pantries, and it's not always available. Peanut butter is very good because it doesn't have to be refrigerated. So if you have no kitchen, or if your kitchen does not have a refrigerator, it doesn't make any difference. The peanut butter is still going to work. It's also very good because it has a long shelf life, and even though people tell me that when they get the peanut butter to their home, wherever or whatever that is, it goes instantly, but still it has a long shelf life. Peanut butter works very good for people who have no teeth, and there are a lot of people who do come to pantries. Their teeth don't work anymore, so peanut butter is important. Peanut butter is also good for people who are vegetarians, and it's also good for the homeless because you can carry the peanut butter around with you on your backpack. So it's easy for you to take with you. And all you need, if you're going to eat peanut butter, is possibly crackers, or if you're lucky enough, some celery strips, or just nothing. You can just eat a peanut butter popsicle if you want. It's a wonderful, nutritious food, and I am using the proceeds from the stall that I have at the Mowers Meadow Flea Market to purchase foods for the hungry. And of course, everything I get needs to be homeless friendly, because I'm very aware of the situation with the homeless in our community. I want to thank you so much for having joined me this evening. I want to thank you for your interest in alleviating hunger. I want to thank you to all of you who have purchased copies of this book so far. And I want to thank you, all of you, who will be buying this book in the future. I think you'll enjoy it. People have been coming up to me and saying that they enjoy it. Nobody's come up to me yet and said it's a really bad book. So, and in Woodstock, I think if somebody thought it was a really bad book, they would tell me. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm working on the second volume called A Ketchup Sandwich, and that's going to probably be a year out. But that is a further on book dealing with the spiritual themes that one finds in a food pantry. Homelessness, fear, forgiveness, hope, different things like that. So that's going to be a really interesting book. But that's not available now. Today, this is about the people and the miracles in the Woodstock Food Pantry. And it's a very Woodstock book, and it's very easy to read. It's been well published so that it's very easy to read the words, very easy to read the pictures. There are a lot of nice photographs in it, and I think you will enjoy it very much. And I thank you very, very much for having spent this time with me this evening.